Madam Secretary, thank you for being here. A couple questions. When did you receive the federal funding?
I'm sorry, which federal funding?
The $133 million.
I think it comes to us in
million.
no, I understand your question now. You're talking about UC dollars. I believe it comes to us in quarterly payments, or is it biannually? The federal, the federal fiscal year is different than the state fiscal year. It comes to us
September to September.
Yes, October 1 through September 30th, and we get it quarterly.
Okay, so at $133 million, you made some decisions based on $56 million of state funding to lay off approximately 500 people?
Yes, I believe, if I'm following your question.
I'm trying to understand why we didn't go with the $133 million that was going to be coming in. Back of the napkin math, I have 8 months. If it started in September and you laid off in December, I'm just confused on that matter.
Yeah. When we ran I think I understand your question. When we ran the numbers, actually starting back in August, but continually on a practically weekly or biweekly basis from August until November 18th, when we had to do the layoff notices. Once we hit April of this year, April of 2017, we ran in the red and we never recovered from it, based on when our quarterly payments were coming in. And so the longer I delayed any kind of layoff, the more I would have to lay off to get out of the red and back into the black. And that was the decisions that were being made all along, is the longer we delayed, the sooner we ran the red ink and that we couldn't get out of. But based on what we had in federal dollars and the end of state dollars on December 30th, come April of this year, we ran red ink that we couldn't recover from.
So could we laid off less and made it to June?
No. If we laid off less, we would have ran red ink before April.
Before, okay. So my other question then reverts to the state funding was $56 million, 500 people. Are all these employees making over $100,000 a year?
No, the average cost of our workers in our complement is, in terms of what they make, is $49,700, I believe, and it's probably a little lower in UC just based on the pay grades of the folks in there.
Okay. So you also mentioned you have a group that was part of the layoffs that was responsible for delinquent receivables, and what were the delinquent receivables prior to the layoffs, total delinquent receivables?
I do have a figure. I'll make sure I provide it to folks. I know we've provided it in the past. It's a high number. I think one of the things you have to understand about that high number is it's kind of like court costs and fees. There's a lot of what I'll call folks on the books that will never be able to be recovered from. The business went out of existence. The person is no longer there.
You're not allowed to write those off after you know that the business is gone?
Yeah, we do not write them off, and I don't know if that is a policy decision of us or the USDOL. It's our policy. It's our policy decision.
So if I refreshed your memory on some of these numbers, would you be able to give me the percentage that should be written off?
I would rather you ask the question and me get you those answers in writing.
I understand delinquent receivables as of June to be about, from the employer's side, to be about $197 million. I understand the delinquent employee withholding receivables was about $2 million and change. The interest receivables, $97 million, $97.4 million. Penalty receivables, over $8 million. Fee receivables, 1.9, for a total of $307 million. What are we doing to collect this money? That's a lot of money and would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. Thank you. We are very aggressive in our collections, and if you look at how Pennsylvania stacks up, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that that's 4% of our, why do I have that 4% number stuck in my head? It's well, let me do this. I know that as we compare it to other states, we are not out of the norm in terms of what happens there. So let me get all that information to you.
Okay, but I'm worried about Pennsylvania. I'm not worried about other states.
Okay.
$307 million seems like a lot of money. And I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that a percentage of those companies are gone and you're never going to see that money. However, the money that's still available, we have to get much more aggressive on, because these numbers solve your problems.
Actually, thank you for that question, but they don't solve my problem, and here's why. Those numbers, every penny that is recovered there goes into the trust fund. The trust fund dollars are not allowed to be used to administer the unemployment compensation system. The feds give you different money for administering the unemployment compensation system.
Okay. Thank you for that answer.
Very good. Representative Kim.
Thank you, Chairman Saylor. Good afternoon, Secretary. I'm going to go back to the minimum wage. The Federal Reserve Chair and many economists have said that wage stagnation is one of the last factors before we head into a full recovery from the recession. In 2016, which I'm sure you know, the inflation-adjusted minimum wage was about 1/3 below its 1968 level. Even the productivity has doubled since 1968. And just a reminder, $7.25 an hour full-time is only $15,000 a year. I believe raising the minimum wage to a livable wage is so important for a number of reasons, but one is to increase the purchasing power of low-wage workers, which in return helps the local economy and local businesses. Most of the northeastern states have already raised the minimum wage. In fact, 4 states that surround Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio, New Jersey, and New York, all have a higher minimum wage and a lower unemployment rate. I think that's important to note. As policymakers, we need to make these changes too with our neighboring states. If we could agree on a higher minimum wage, whatever that magic number is, how important to you is it to attach it with a cost of a living adjustment? And would you be open and think it's more helpful if it's a graduated minimum wage, anything higher than $7.25?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Representative Kim, for your advocacy for increasing the minimum wage. And I really don't want to speak out of school. It is the governor's kind of position to set the policy for our administration. You know he supports the minimum wage. I don't know if he has come out publicly with a position with regard to an automatic cost of living escalator, so I will reserve that answer for the governor. If I may, Mr. Chairman, get back to the last question too. I misspoke with regard to what goes into the trust fund, and the bulk of the dollars that I was being asked about do go into the trust fund. Representative, the penalties and interest, should penalties and interest be able to be recoverable, or in those instances, penalty interest does not have to go into the trust fund. So to the extent that there could be penalties, additional penalties and interest captured, that amount could go into the actual administration of the fund. And I didn't mean to deceive, I just misspoke.
Representative Kim, were you done? Okay, I wanted to make sure you were done.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patty. I'm sorry.
Okay.